welcome to our culture chat today. Now, I'm just going to make a wild guess. I know we have some people joining us as part of the conversation, and my guess is all of you are on a couch. Well, there's something really exciting and fun that's going to be happening on a couch this weekend. And joining us to talk about it is Greg Jenkins, who is with the Somerville Arts Council.
Hello.
And Jay Paget. Many of you may know his name. Here's his face and his drum kit in the background. And we're going to talk about CouchFest. Oh, doesn't that sound delicious for the weekend? I can't imagine a better way to spend it. But before we get into that specifically, Greg, thank you very much for taking a little time out for us today on the Culture Chat. And I wanted to start out talking about, you are probably one of our exemplars, longest serving, great experts in creative placemaking, creative economy, revitalizing community through the arts and culture, and so many of the ingredients of that, getting outside, festivals, making things happen with people and bringing them together and connecting, poof, that's gone. How are you thinking about your work these days?
I mean, it's been tricky. I think, you know, what we do as an arts council is very much about, you know, trying to find ways in which to bring creativity out into the community and to sort of find new audiences, or, you know, even to just support existing audiences. And a lot of our work, like you had mentioned, you know, some of the cultural economic development work that we did with Mary Jenkins, your old retired colleague, you know, dated back to 2005 when the MCC first started that program. And it was very intentional about trying to work in physical squares with physical assets, or knowing what the assets are of that, you know, whether it's Union Square or East Somerville, which is very different, or Davis Square, which is very different, sort of identifying the neighborhoods and identifying those assets, and then looking at not just the artist community, but the audience as well as the business community, and, you know, and trying to bring people into, you know, Union Square or to Davis, or understanding a little bit more about what, you know, what may be prohibiting people to, like, you know, go and visit international food markets or in, you know, Union Square, and making it easier. So, I mean, all of our work is about, you know, that kind of cross collaboration that takes a lot of risk in a lot of ways. And what I realize now that I sit there and say that is that, you know, the work is about sort of having the ability to take a risk that's safe, and have the ability to kind of, you know, express yourself or put yourself out of different boundaries. And I think, you know, the coronavirus, I mean, Conavi and all of this is basically, you know, it's flatlined any variant of risk, and saying we're all in this risk together, but it's all very much a controlled risk. I mean, so it's been really hard. We're doing what we call a Home Alone series, where every Tuesday and Thursday, we're, you know, paying artists to basically, we're helping them, you know, learn how to do Facebook Live, learn how to think about how to present themselves. So every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 o'clock, we have another, you know, art series basically, where we're trying to, you know, reach out to the Somerville's artist community. And it's a way in which we're paying them, for one thing. Too, it's like trying to find ways in which we can still engage artists and have, you know, to a certain extent, you know, in our sort of government way to justify being able to pay them money, is to help us produce this work. So we're putting that live. I mean, everything at this point is live. I mean, we talked, you know, briefly. We're trying to do more work around, you know, public art as well, because we feel like, you know, even with the sort of, you know, anti-gathering situation that we have out there, we can't attract crowds, but, you know, we can still do public art. But, you know, we're seeing that too is really hard. So that's kind of how we're.
Yeah, your experience. Greg, before we continue on that line, I do want to remind the people who are joining us on this little screen that down at the bottom of your laptop, there's a button that says Q&A. And I would encourage you to just press that button right now and type in a question, a comment, an observation, your experience. And I want to pick up on where we just left off, Greg, because I know that at the Mass Cultural Council and many of the conversations that we've been having, we talk about gaining the trust of the audience, bringing the audience back, creating places and spaces where the audience feels safe to come back and experience and participate in the arts. But it's not just the audience. We need, in many cases, to bring the artists back. I'm going to ask you to unmute. What is your experience? What are you hearing from artists that you invite to participate?
I mean, we just did a survey, or we still have this survey out that we actually sort of modeled a little bit of the questions that you all did 3 weeks ago. And what's interesting is that even in the past, when we've done surveys, we've typically got a lot of response. I think there's a lot of paralysis out there. There are a number of people that are on Facebook or social media. I mean, I myself am getting on it more and more and more just because I know that's how people are communicating. What we're finding is that people have a lot of ideas about things, but when we start to engage them about actualizing on them, there seems to be a little bit of a stalling going on. They do seem fine wanting to do stuff virtually, which makes sense. I mean, we could talk a little bit about too, like, I mean, we're trying to push back. I think there's a little bit of a dance that's going on with the mayor and us and the health department right now of kind of like, you know, how much can we do outside or can we not? Is it okay to have individual musicians performing at, you know, farmers markets, which the farmers markets are starting to roll out? You know, we're having conversations. I mean, a lot of our work especially is always about festivals. I mean, so much of our work is from May until October in terms of the exhaustion of outdoor events. But I actually do think that we should be able to get back to some type of outdoor events. And I think if anything, the audience in Massachusetts, I think is different than say maybe other states. They're going to be incredibly cautious coming out. I mean, you already see how much people are self-isolating when I walk down, you know, you walk down the street. So I think there's a need to have this combination of you know, government saying, here's how we need to reopen and here's how things can happen. I think the danger is going to be sort of small to mid-range size venue spaces that either just don't have enough space, you know, to have enough socially isolating, you know, distancing. But I do think that the LCCs or the communities that, you know, I could see, you know, sculpture gardens being more popular, things that are outdoors, and that if anything, hopefully this summer we can try to, you know, find a way to re-engage audiences through outdoor types of events and venues. And maybe that will help guide us towards the fall and colder weather. But yeah.
And unfortunately, we're getting that colder weather right now in May. What luck. As long as we're inside, we might as well have the cold weather to go with it. So I don't know, great design or great adaptation, but one of everybody's favorite events, which is PorchFest, where the bands and the musicians get outside of their porches and play, has been transformed into, drum roll, definitely Jay Paget, CouchFest. And before we start talking about it, I know you brought a video around, and if anybody is just thinking that they're going to lull into a quiet moment, just wait. Here comes the video.
Boozy Eagle Seagull is brother the whole of my Levi's. Pocket, I don't stop, make a beeline. At the drop, made a sweat with my weed guy. Money talks.
And I really don't care if nobody else believes, 'cause I still got a lot of light left in me.
Ah, that's coming up tomorrow. Tomorrow is Saturday, since we've all lost any concept of time and space. Yes, that is tomorrow, Saturday the 9th. And Jay, I'm going to switch over to you and give Greg a little breather here. Now, y'all know Jay from the Mass Cultural Council, but today he is Jay, drummer, musician, and a member of the band and PorchFest Rock on Tour. Jay, talk a little bit about the switch from porches to couches.
Yeah, it's a big switch. I mean, I'm in a couple different bands, and both of those bands have participated in PorchFest, one of them since the first year. So I think, are you in year 7 or 8, Greg? I can't remember, but it's obviously it's grown in popularity. When the sun's out and everyone's out on the street, the whole town feels like carnival. It's really something unmatched really by any other community. So now we pivot to these, multiple screens, rehearsals, trying to come up with videos that will present the band. It's interesting. It's challenging getting a number of people together to rehearse on a regular basis and develop content and arrange content, get ready to perform, book a gig, and all of that. So some of the tasks have been replaced by the technology right now. So I've been sort of equating the technology to the new member of the band. So just say the 3 of us were a band. Okay, now we have a new 4th member, and that's the technology. And as we play together, and we're used to playing together, the 3 of us, the new member isn't. And the new member's time isn't very good. They're dropping out, and they're kind of messing us up. And we can't really kick this member out of the band because it's their rehearsal room, and they have the car that drove us here, and they supply the beer and the wine. So we're really not ready to, so we have to live with this person and we have to deal with it. So that's what it's been like. There's a lot of platforms that are out there right now for rehearsing together. And my favorite one is the novel Intervallic Network for Jamming Musicians. It sounds like a space agency or something like that.
Now, wait a minute, Jay. Jay, you're going to have to say that again. And Carmen, who's with us always, is going to put that in the chat because I know nobody caught that. At least I didn't. Say it again.
So it's novel, intervallic, like the word interval, but vallic at the end. Network for Jamming Musicians. And the acronym is NINJAM, NINJAM. And it's really an amazing tool. And what it does is, so for the example of us playing together and the technology not being quite right because my bandwidth is slow and Greg's bandwidth is really fast, but in the aggregate, it's just not working. So what this NINJAM does is Greg will start the musical, he'll set a amount of time on the software and he'll play his musical phrase. I and Anita won't hear it. We hear it the second time through. And then we start playing along with it. And what happens is it takes all the latency out of the picture. And all we have to do is kind of hang on to each other and go with the original form that Greg played. And then he just keeps playing it. So if you do a 12-bar blues, for example, everyone knows that form and you can keep going through the form ad infinitum, right? And then the other way to use it, which is interesting, if you don't have a form and it's a free form kind of jam, and you're not worried too much about a structure of chords and things like that. So we found that to be really inspirational, and it's interesting because we still get a buzz from playing, even though we're not in the same room together, just the headphones on and the music's going, and after an hour and a half and a second glass of wine, you know,
Everything sounds
it's
good.
almost as good.
But I would say, Jay, to I think one of the earlier points that Greg was making, you know, this, you talked about this new member of the band, but this may not be a member I like in the first place. I'm gonna have to get used to this new member. I mean, already, of course, we're all used to Zoom, and now we're actually sick of Zoom, but that's because we do it so much. But there is sort of a hesitation or a barrier of confidence you have to get past to embrace these technologies. And number one, and number two, I can't tell you how many of these chats we've had where people are really searching for the technology that works for them as opposed to the other way around.
Oh, wait, okay. The last part was they're looking for technology that works for them as opposed to
Us working for the technology
us working for
and
the
adapting
technology.
and accommodating to the technology's needs and requirements.
Right. There, I don't think it's there. Honestly, I think it's almost like you're forced to use software that's limited. Um, there's latency issues that are huge when playing, together. So I don't think there's a choice right now, not that I'm aware of anyway. And if anyone listening knows how to flip the equation so it's really working for us more than we have to work to sort of get in sync with it. Maybe it's a combination because Ninjam actually does, once you start playing, you forget you're in software. You forget you're anywhere but in the music, which is the place you want to be. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
Well, it kind of does. I guess in a way, when we live in a world where we think technology can do anything for us, and isn't there an app for that? Like virtually anything I want. I have been surprised at the shortcomings in this particular area of technology, that there isn't something there already that automatically synchronizes everything and everybody and makes all the sound come at the same time and the right time and the same volume and whatever else we all need.
right.
Hopefully necessity will be the mother of invention, and we will have something very soon.
Well, we will, and it's called 5G, and that network, which we hear about, but we don't know, but it's 100 times faster than what we currently have. The infrastructure and the computers, the infrastructure, the phones, and everything hasn't caught up to it yet. So yeah, it will happen. But unfortunately, it's not there right now. So we're stuck with the band member who's kind of slow and
Clunky and really not very good, right?
not very good and doesn't play very well, but you can't get rid of him.
So Greg, say more about CouchFest. How many bands have you got participating? How can people tune in and tune on?
We have, I think it's around 120 bands that are, signed up. It's going to follow some of the same type of, the same structure that we've done before. What we've done to even make it even though Somerville is like, 4.1 square miles, I think ever since after the first year that was so popular, we realized that we needed to separate out the city. So the western part of the city is typically from 12 to 2. Central part is from 2 to 4, and then the eastern part is 4 to 6. And when it was live, it actually was really kind of nice because you really could come into town and start from one section of town and just kind of walk across and hopefully catch, 2 to 3 bands maybe per zone. I mean, we have a map, like if people are interested, you just go to our website, somervilleartscouncil.org/PorchFest. And so now, as we've shifted virtually, what we're doing is, and Jay is with Ordinary People, right? I think that's the name of his band.
Opposite People.
Opposite People is performing. And I think what we did this year is that we sort of tweaked the registration process. I mean, the real beauty of PorchFest really is that it's it's decentralized. Like we don't curate it. We only provide a structure by which the bands are doing, you know, all of the uploading of images, links, descriptions. I mean, it's kind of amazing if you look back at all of the, on a database level, if you start geeking out on the data level, like there's a lot of data on the back end of this on our website. And what, so you as a viewer this year, or whether you were walking, it's the same thing. You're still going to go throughout our city, you know, by these zones, which I think is kind of nice. You start to think like who's performing in what sections of the city, which is kind of neat. And then what you're going to experience are three things, basically. You're going to either see people that are doing live performances and streaming it through either, you know, Facebook Live, Instagram Live. There's all these, you know, social media platforms have live, you know, types of platforms. Or you're going to see more of what's, I mean, Jay will help me a little bit, like what we consider like a premiere video, where exactly what, you know, he's talking about with this ninja is like bands creating, you know, they're separate, but they've come together to perform. And so they've created this. Or the third thing you're going to find on the site or with different people, you won't know until you go, you know, specifically to each band member's page. You may see just pre-recorded band videos. But that's, you know, it's at least it's a way in which, again, to kind of show the wealth and the diversity of the music scene in Somerville. And we did, you know, I think like a lot of, you know, art or a lot of things, like we appropriated this from Ithaca. There was somebody who came to us who had, you know, gone to Ithaca the previous year and said, I went to this really neat little thing. It was only about 10 houses in this neighborhood of Ithaca. And it was called PorchFest. And it was like, I really think we could do that here in Somerville. And I was like, you know, we really could. And so, I mean, very much similar to like Open Studios concept, right? But it's more for music as opposed to visual arts. But that very first year, we had a public meeting about it, and like 40 people showed up to this public meeting to see if they wanted to participate and to help us out. You know, we had one person help, you know, the first year it was more of a Google Map type of thing. And, you know, somebody penned all of the Google Maps. And then the second year, you know, I worked a lot with my, I'll do a shout out to Moses and then later to Kurt, sort of our web gurus. And we created this map. We created a self-registration process. We created, you know, so again, you know, Anita, you could go on, or Jay goes on and you just register, and then, you know, it appears on this map virtually. So it's kind of neat in that sense. And Anita mentioned too, like, you know, how many people are, you know, is it as many, but at the beginning, not that many people were sort of interested. And just in the past week, it's kind of, I have to go in and moderate this and make sure that people aren't posting things that, so it's a lot of, you know, I wouldn't say it's a lot of work, but I still have to moderate all these postings and make sure that they're structured right and things are, but within the past 4 days, I think we've gotten, you know, another third of our attendees coming in. So it's you know, classic thing of artists doing everything at the last minute. And,
Now they have,
you know, deadlines. And,
you have to get that new band member whipped into shape, and that's probably taking
yeah,
extra time.
exactly.
Jay is an artist and is somebody who has participated in PorchFest over the years. I mean, do you get the same satisfaction doing it this way, or is it exciting in a different way?
It's exciting in a different way. I do think there's a little bit of an endorphin rush playing music, and once you connect with music and you lose yourself in it, that's, for me at least, that's kind of the way, one of the reasons I do it, is it's just, it's transformative in that moment, right? So that can still happen. You know, it can happen putting on headphones and listening to a recording. And when you play, it's more visceral. And you know, Anita, you play music as well. So you're connected to the music physically and spiritually as well. So this is a little bit of a different thing. The way we approached Greg's offer with Opposite People was we took a pre-recorded song that we had already done and we had written called Orange Line. And we listened to the recording with headsets individually, and then we taped ourselves playing just our part, right? And then Josh, the bass player, he took it upon himself, and I don't know if he's finished yet, because that's why I was asking Greg
No.
the deadline. He's going to take all the videos and then sync them together, and we're going to try to recreate our own song this way. Does that make sense?
Kind of sort of does, but I don't want to understand it any more than that. We've got a couple people who've written in questions. Here's one from an anonymous attendee. Are there any best practices from artists about how to monetize their performance through streaming, performing live? Many show their Venmo or PayPal, but anything you've heard. And I think this is such a great question because so many of our artists are turning to technology, but instead of just not being paid enough, we're just giving it away. Any thoughts on that, either Jay or Greg? Yeah, and Greg, you're.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the one thing that we're doing for the Home Alone series, which I think is helpful, even though it's the artist's own platform, by us, we are curating that. So by the very nature of us promoting it ahead of time, the fact that, I mean, our Facebook page, I mean, we actually have a pretty robust social media presence in terms of number of likes or people following us. So, I mean, we're able to promote, I think, a lot more than maybe some, I mean, some artists have a huge social media platform. But I think that by doing partnerships with people in general, you're going to exponentially expand the range of where people are going to see this, which I think has been helpful to the artists that we've brought on and employed.
I have one comment on that. I think the monetization of the forum can be done the way it has been done with Bandcamp and Reverb Nation, and you upload your content, you broadcast that content's available, and I can go on and I can buy your collection of songs for $9, $8, $7. So a lot of those ways to monetize music is already in place, and I would recommend just maximizing what's already there, and then and then marketing it in the ways that are typical ways people market their music as well.
Genevieve Day also writes in. She says, I am looking forward to learning more and experiencing Somerville CouchFest tomorrow and taking notes, she says. The Fenway Alliance is one of 3 community partners that organize Fenway PorchFest. We have decided to postpone our original date on June 20th until the fall of 2020, but are researching having a mini virtual fest on our original day. This is all new to us, so we are learning the best practices as we go along. Quick tip, Greg, in response to Genevieve?
You're blocked.
Yep.
Okay.
No, I mean, we get calls from JP. We've gotten calls from Wisconsin. I mean, we're getting calls constantly about PorchFest and the structure. I do think that every community is going to be different. I mean, even if it's live, every community is going to be different. Every sort of, form of government is going to take a different stance. I mean, Somerville is Jay kind of alluded to like the crowds. I mean, this past year, we became a little concerned that the crowds were a little out of control. And then the question is, how do you control that or not control it? It's a huge issue. But in terms of doing it virtual, I mean, as we've been talking about, sadly, it's now all about the technology. So it's not just the bands performing, but I mean, we put a lot of effort into this webpage and to doing the registration process and all of that. So, I mean, it may look seamless and sometimes it's a little clunky, but I mean, it's a lot of hours just to get that website going and to create the registration process. So that in itself is probably a huge hurdle for a lot of groups that, may want to do this virtually, is to figure out just the web presence of doing it. So, I mean, if folks want to, they're always welcome to email me, go to our website. My email address is on there. I mean, I think that, I'm always telling people, what are your existing assets and what, where's the energy? Because I can sit there and tell you what I think may be, good for what works for us, but it may not work for the Fenway, and, you really have to go with where the energy is, I think. And that's the best way. And just be, have an iterative process and kind of move and, kind of go with what makes sense, and be flexible. So.
I'm going to take this one last question from Jess Muse. How will you evaluate engagement and participation in these transformed events? How might expectations and goals change? So, it's easy to see crowds and enthusiasm in real life and live events such as PorchFest, but are you looking at different metrics this time?
I mean, the one thing that we know, I think with PorchFest, it could be a little tricky. I know for this Home Alone series that we've been doing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, because of the way Facebook Live works, I mean, you really can see how many people are viewing, how many likes they've gotten. We've started to try to track to find out how much money they brought in from the presentation. So, I mean, those are sort of three ways in which we can, look at it. I mean, I need to get back in, and truth be told, we haven't even looked to see on Google Analytics, the back end of even our site. But we do know, through our own Facebook page, that when we did a post about PorchFest or CouchFest, it got, over 1,000 and some types of, reaches or whatever. So, I mean, Facebook has a lot of good analytics. So it's there. We got a lot of, like I was mentioning earlier, we got a lot of responses to, I did a post on public art trying to say, now the weather's getting better. They collaborate with us on Switchbox projects or phone booth projects. And it got a ton of response, but we only got one person that's wanting to do something. So again, it's this issue of trying to understand the audience, trying to understand what they're, hopefully the more we can do to show and demonstrate that, we're not going to stop, or we're going to keep trying to find creative ways of engaging people, that will, hopefully, bring people out of this level of paralysis really that, we are seeing. So.
I'm going to give you the last word, Jay, because I know you are never paralyzed, because I get to see you, or at least virtually see you on a
do you want the last word?
Okay, here it comes.
Ready?
And he plays us out. Jay Paget, Greg Jenkins, thank you so much for being part of our culture chat today. And don't forget, CouchFest this weekend. Don't miss it. Bye-bye.
CouchFest Saturday, tomorrow, 12 to 6.
12 to 6. You got it.
Arts Council.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye, Jay.
Bye-bye, Greg. Bye, Anita.
Bye. Good to see you. Thanks, Anita.